Okay guys, in this lesson I'm going to talk to you about harmonizing a major scale and turning it into triads, or if you want to call them chords. Just between you and me, we'll call them chords. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get into some of the technical aspects. If you are studying for your own pleasure or for academic usage, then you will hopefully find this lesson useful, and if you do, give us a subscribe and all that good stuff. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at the ingredients that we need to make these chords, and the ingredients that we use are scales. Scales are great for a couple of things, because scales are not just used for melodies. You might think that's what it's for, creating the tune, but it isn't just for that. The scales, we can think of those as ingredients, and that's the way I see these guys. The ingredients for pitch are chords, scales, and arpeggios, and they are all linked to each other. Let's start with the ingredients from the C major scale. I use the C major scale because it has no sharps or flats, and when we have no sharps or flats, it's a little bit easier for you to think about how this works. So these are the ingredients, but how do we mix these ingredients up to make chords? I'm glad you asked. We're going to number these. This is the root note, or the first note. Root, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and then we get the octave. And you may have noticed that's the starting note and that's the end note, and what we've got is a repeat there. So really, we don't have 8 notes, we have 7 notes that are ingredients. This is just a repeat of the first note. The way it works with making triads, we do something called tertian movement, and that means basically moving up in threes. And the easiest way to see it is for me to show you how we make a C major chord. This is the root note, and what we do is we play a game of leapfrog. We jump over this D note, and then what we do is we collect this ingredient here. You imagine it's a game. This is you here. You jump over, you've collected the third, and then you jump over and you have another item that you need to collect, and that is the fifth. If we take this bit here, we've got the root, the third, and the fifth. This forms what's known as a triad. Triceratops, triangle, tertian, 3. So it's all about 3. What I have to do is use each of these ingredients as a starting point to jump over and create a new triad. If I do it like this, C, E, G, and I can do the same thing here. D, jump over to get an F, and then jump over again to get an A. Let's move on here. E, jump over, get a G. We've collected that one. Jump over and pick up this B at the end there. Okay, let's go from the F, jump over again, let's get the A, jump over again, let's get the C. Let's go from G to the B, and we haven't got it on here, so this is a little bit sketchy. You start to see that where you can lose track, but I'm going to give you a tool to be able to not lose track in a minute. But it goes B, C, D there, then we get A, then we get C, and then we get E by jumping over, and then the last ingredient is a B, jump over, we get a D, and we get an F. Now this is a cool way for us to understand those triads. If I just put these in a table, then what you'll find is this is the easiest way for you to see these. If I just bang them in there like that, and then I'm going to label them. Now this column here, these are all the root notes for these triads, and this is going to be the third. This is where we picked up all those thirds, and this column here is going to be the fifth. The thing to note is that we have 2 types of thirds. This is a string and these are frets. If we go up 2 steps like that, this is a major third. That's the distance of a major third. If you think about major and minor, think of them as 2 sides of the same coin. They're a yin and yang deal. Wherever there is a major, there is always going to be a minor. Minor is a lesser deal. Minor means less, essentially. So if you imagine you had a major leak in the roof of your house, then that would be a big deal. But if you had a minor leak in your house, which means we're going to get this minor third here, then we are going to be able to cope with that a lot better than if we had a major leak in our house. The way we get a minor third is just by going back 1 fret. So you can see here I had a step and a step. Now what I've got is I've got a step and a half step, so 1 1/2. If I put that in there, that's a minor third, that's a major third. So we've got 2 types of thirds, and that's important because what happens here is the distance between these changes. If if you haven't got room to draw this graph on your shirt sleeve or the back of your hand, then you might want to use this thing that I call the cycle of thirds. I think it's really important. You can transpose it to all your other keys by adding sharps and flats. Let me just say that again in case somebody writes in the comments, what do you do with this cycle of thirds in other keys? What you do is if it's in the key of G, you add an F sharp to the cycle. That's all you do. So here is the mnemonic that I use for this. Every good band deserves fans and cash. So what you can see here is that this little mnemonic is going to help you to remember all these notes. Instead of building this awkward skyscraper of a graph here, then what you get is C, E, G. If you look here, C, E, G. I can find the root, third and fifth just by cycling around. Now I used every good band deserves fans and cash because that's the way I remembered it, but it's completely up to you. You don't even have to start on the E if you want to make your own mnemonic for it. The thing about mnemonics is they are crutches. You use them until you just know exactly what it is that you are meant to be retaining information wise. But remember, that just goes every good band deserves fans and cash. And there's a reason this is useful, because this is how you remember the notes on your musical stave. Look. Every good band deserves fans and cash. We can use this as an awesome little tool to help us. But here's the thing that I want to show you. Because at the end of this, there is something that I want you to memorize. And you need to memorize it. Just like you need to memorize your major scale formula because it's super important. This is something that you just need to memorize. I'm going to explain it to you in the key of C major. This is the first chord. This is the second chord, third chord, fourth chord, fifth chord, sixth chord, seventh chord. But these numbers here don't tell me whether that chord has a major third or a minor third. And that's really important because that's going to tell us whether a chord is major or minor. What we do is we change these Arabic numbers into Roman numerals. This is a Roman numeral number 1. And you can tell it's a Roman numeral number 1 because it's got this top line on it here and this bottom line on it here, serifs, and this means major. Anytime you see that uppercase version of a Roman numeral, it means major. However, if it is in lowercase, which means it's just got the dot on it, it means it's minor. It means it's less. And in fact, when I spell major, I use a capital M. When I spell minor, I use a lowercase m. I'm going to take this information here. I'm going to show you how this works in building triads. I did a video on triads actually, and if you want to see that, I'll put it up in the end of the video. There'll be a link to that. So we're going to build this first chord, C, E and G. If we look at the distance between this C and this E, we can figure out that the distance between C and E is 2 whole steps, which gives us a major third. I'm going to introduce some shorthand symbols now as well. So there's a lot going on here, but this is like a massive overview, and if you get this in your head, you will understand key. So we have a triangle symbol, which means major. It's a shorthand. So instead of writing the word major 3, major 6, all that out, I just write major like that as a triangle. I'm going to use this minus symbol here to denote that I am thinking in major and minor intervals. This is going to become super important when we look at the distance between these in the cycle of thirds. So look, I can put this major and the minor in this cycle of thirds. So between the C and the E, I can put this major symbol just there to help me. In between the E to the G, that's minor. I'm going to fill these in so that you don't have to think about it too much while I'm demonstrating, but you will have to do this after in your homework. G to B is major, B to D is minor, D to F is minor, F to A is major, A to C is minor. So if we refer to this, then we can figure out what's going on with these triads. So C to E, we figured that out. Now this is the root, this is the third, this is the fifth. I'll put that there just so that you can see that we're putting that table there on its side and we're spreading it out this way. Root, third and fifth. So the distance between the C to the E is a major third. That means the chord is going to be major as long as this fifth is a good fifth, which it is. Interesting to note that when we get a major triad, going from the third to the fifth is always going to be a minor. It's really weird how they flip over like that. It's one of the beautiful things about music and this symmetry that it has. But because we've got this major third here, we can confidently put that 1 there in Roman numeral format and then say to ourselves, is it major or is it minor? Which version of this am I going to use? Because this is called extended Roman numerals. We take these extended Roman numerals. I know that's major because it's got a major third. We're going to put that Roman numeral there like that. So let's move on to the next note. The next ingredient we had here was DFA. Let's look, DFA. Let's put those there. DFA. That's the root, that's the third, and that's the fifth. The distance between the D and the F, if we look at our cycle of thirds here, we can see D to F, we get that minor. That's cool. We can work it out on our guitar as well on the fretboard if we want to as well. The F to an A, we can figure that out. Look, F to an A, that's a major. And here is the cool thing again. Notice the third that we have now is a minor third, which means this chord is D minor. And then I would go up here and I would alter these accordingly. So I know by taking that C there, that's major. I don't have to do anything to it. I'm looking at the D there and I have to add that minor to it. That means I get a D minor chord. I'll write them all out underneath it as well. But notice how we get this flipping of the thirds. So in a minor chord, in between the third and the fifth, we get a major third. It's pretty awesome. Now, because this is a minor chord, we're going to use a minor version of the Roman numeral, which means we write a number 2, and we just put 2 dots on it to show that it's lowercase. Let's take this one, E. I'm just coming along one ingredient at a time, and you can see that we get E, G, and B. Let's put those in, E, G, B. So if we go up there and up there with those brackets, E to G, let's have a little nosy on our cycle of thirds. E to G is a minor. Let's put that in there. Can you guess what's going to happen here between the G and the B? Let's have a look. G to B, that's a major third. So the third in this E chord here is a minor. That means it's going to be an E minor chord. Let's add that up here. We've got that E minor chord. Because it's a minor chord, that is how we spell it in Roman numerals. Wonderful. So we've got the first 3 chords done. Let's do the next one. F. Just follow along, guys. F, A, C. Those are my root, third, and fifth. Root, third, fifth, going up, stacking them as they get higher in pitch. Brackets on there. F to an A. Let's look at our cycle of thirds. It's going to help us. F to an A, it's major. Wonderful. Can we guess what's going to happen here? A to a C is minor. That means we've got a major third there. This means this is going to be a major chord. The root note is F, and it's going to be an F major. Do we need to put anything on that? Nope, nothing there at all. The Roman numeral I would use is a 4, but because it's major, I'm going to put those serifs on there like that. This is how we get this extended Roman numeral stuff. When you see the Roman numerals that are sometimes spelt like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is basic Roman numerals, and what they don't tell you is whether they are major or minor. When we use this uppercase, lowercase, it tells us if it's major or minor. Useful to know. So we get a G. Let's look. G, B, D. Good band deserved. So just remembering my mnemonic there. Let's look at the distance between the G and the B and the D. The distance between the G and the B is a major third. Bang that in there. Let's look at the distance between the B and the D. It tells you, look, major, minor. This has got a major third. The root note is G, so it's going to be a G major chord. Do we need to add anything to this? No, we don't. But because it's a major chord, if I put my Roman numeral 5 there, I have to make sure it's spelt in the major uppercase spelling, those serifs on top. Next note that we have, A. Let's do this one. A. C, E, A, C, E in that cycle of thirds there, just to help you. A, C there, and then that E there. Okay, A to C, that's a minor. C to E, that's a major, because it's this pattern that happens. It just happens in your major chords and your minor chords. They flip around. We can see that we've got a minor third with the root note A, so we're going to call it A minor. Let's amend that by putting a little M next to that A there, and we can see that tells us what chord we're going to get. Because it's minor, let's look at the Roman numeral spelling. We've got a 5 and a 1 there, because that's 5, 6, and it's minor, so we put the dot on it just to show you that it is lowercase. Wonderful. Now, here is the tricky sucker. This one is the odd one out of the family. This is what we need to get into our heads as well. This is a strange chord. B, D, F. You see there, B, D, F. Look at what happens here. B to a D is a minor third, and D to an F is also a minor third. So this introduces another rule, another thing that we have to remember. The way I think of it is because that is a minor third, I'm still going to use a minor version of the spelling here. But because we've got 2 of these minors, then we have a problem. this distance between the B and the F isn't what's known as a perfect fifth. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 chords, they all have perfect fifths, which makes them sound really stable. But this chord doesn't sound stable because it has a flattened fifth. It's a fifth that is lowered 1 fret. We can also call this the diminished fifth. We take the perfect fifth and we diminish it. And when we diminish it, we make it less. If you think about it, if you didn't eat for a week, hopefully your torso would be diminished. If you ate double the food all week, you would get the opposite of diminished, which would be augmented. You would be made bigger. So this is a flat 5 or a diminished fifth. And because it's diminished, that means we need this symbol here, this little shorthand that is going to tell us that this chord is diminished. And to show you that, I put that on there. Whew! Take a breath and take that in, because we've just worked out from our ingredients how to make these triads, how these notes all stack up. But the cool thing is, hopefully now you can see that these 3 chords are major. So we have 3 major chords. We can put this in an order like this. Major. This is what you have to memorize. Major, major. We also have 3 minor chords, and then we get the diminished chord right at the end. Apply these Roman numerals to them. When we do it like this, it applies to any key, not just the key of C major. If you swap these out and you put your sharps in or your flats in, the alphabet letters will change, but this structure will not do, because this structure is linked to the major scale. 4, 5, 6, chord 7. The reason you need to memorize it is because chords 1, 4, and 5, your majors, those are known as your primary triads. Excellent. We need to know that. They're your primary triads because those are the most important ones, because this is where we derive our most important movement from chord to chord, and that's something called cadences. Let's look at this minor from chord 2, chord 3, chord 6. These are called, guess what? The secondary triads. And then right at the end there, we get the leading note chord, which is this diminished wobbly bob, I call him. I've shown you how we get the chords from the ingredients here. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. Say that when you're filling the car up with petrol or doing something mundane. Go major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. It becomes easier if you remember that 1, 4, 5 are your primary triads, 2, 3, and 6 are your secondary triads, and your diminished is chord 7. The reason this is important is because once you understand this, then I can show you how you can put this onto your guitar fretboard by using something that I call the L7 grid. And if you want to learn that, then watch this video just here.